Greetings and welcome to the Mental Health Association of Central Florida's episode of Coping Together for June. I am so excited to have with me today Josh Bell, Executive Director of the One Orlando Alliance. Thank you so much for joining with me today, Josh.
Hi, Charlotte. It's good to be here.
And as Josh said, I'm Charlotte, the Vice President of Operations here with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida. And we're excited to talk about Pride. June is Pride Month, and not everyone's got really a background on that. So I'm curious, Josh, if you'll share with us, what does celebrating Pride in June mean to you?
Well, for me, June and for me and really for Orlando in general, June is two things, right? It's Pride celebration and acknowledging that a lot of people do celebrate Pride in June, and then Pulse Remembrance. So it's two opportunities to think about our LGBTQ plus family and what we've been through to get us to where we are. And so, from a pride perspective, I think all the way back to 1969 and the Stonewall Uprising and our transgender leaders of color, these women who stood up and said, no more, no more, hell no, you can't continue to treat us like this. And because of them, because of the work that they did, and the work that they did for not just that moment, but for extended periods of time, really moving gay rights forward and into the mainstream. And then also the folks who did so much work around the AIDS movement, when the president of the United States wouldn't even say AIDS, right? When they were fine with gay people dying of this horrible disease. And there were people who had to stand up and say, no more. Hell no, I'm not doing this anymore. And you can't treat us like this anymore. And so June is, there's parades and there's parties and there's playlists and there's all these amazing, joyful, celebratory things, which are so important. And it's an act of resistance to participate in those things, to show up and say, there is no space in which my presence is inappropriate. There's no space in which you should be trying to keep me away from a certain group of people, like kids or elderly folks or whoever. We're part of this community. Our joy is part of the fabric of this community. And when we get to celebrate Pride, it's saying, no matter who says that we shouldn't be here, we are here. And we are healthy, we are happy, within reason, and we're not going anywhere. And so Pride for me is that June, that spirit of kind of a joyous resistance and a gratitude for the people who have done that before us.
I'm having visceral responses. So anyone's watching my expressions, I'm never going to play poker with them. You're going to see my journey on my face, and you touched on the journey of humanity and of a community. And the word that you said that's my favorite that I had to like scribble down to make sure to remember to say back was family. Chosen family. And I think part of your answer is what resonates for me about Pride is a permission to love oneself in our authentic story and to find others that we identify with in a way that you can shape your family, whether you come from a place that is affirming and is welcoming and juices your expression, or if you're on the hunt or have recently found it. And I so deeply appreciate that you honor, as part of One Orlando Alliance, but also as a community member, honor the experience that we had in June with Pulse, and that the timing there is conflicting and powerful in a really recognizable way, to find that affirming environment and that resistance with joy, that positive self-expression. And I also was just looking it up to make sure, did I have the full picture of Pride? Is my story other people's resistance? And I think what you touched on so much is what I kept reading through is a fighting of any experience of shame. That this month there is to be no tinge of shame in my authentic story, and that I have the rights to be and to share. So I'm grateful you honored some really great advocates in our history. And I know we currently have a lot of LGBTQ advocates to honor in our community. We live in a really rich place here in Central Florida. Part of why this matters, that joyful balance, is that there are adverse experiences that individuals that are LGBTQ plus come across, and definitely an intense example would be that horrific tragedy and shooting that was experienced locally, but also that on an individual level, day to day,
Mm-hmm.
youth who are LGBTQ plus and they experience victimization from physical or verbal harassment or assault are actually 2.5 times more likely to attempt suicide than others. And outside of those adverse experiences, navigating that self-identity, a youth who is bisexual, gay, or lesbian, identifying that way, has a statistical report of attempting suicide 3 times more often than their heterosexual peers. So it's really interesting to see that the pain that individuals are experiencing show up in statistics. So I was
Yep.
wondering on this joyful resistance conversation, what might come to mind for you about wellness and hope related to those suicidal risk statistics?
My goodness. Well, first, if someone is in a space where they feel like suicide is their way out of what they're experiencing, I want to start out by saying I can relate to that. I During my coming out process, there was a season when I had to have a safety plan because it just hurt so bad, right? And so, if you're in that space, I don't want you to feel any sort of shame or isolation or feeling like you're the only one who feels that way. Your feelings are valid and they're also temporary. And so, if you can reach out to someone, find maybe it's chosen family, a community, an agency like the Mental Health Association. There are people who want to walk with you through this, and there is light on the other side of that dark space. And so I just want you to know that. Speaking from personal experience, I know that. And as we live in this world where I really think Pulse is kind of a microcosm of the queer experience, in that it's a place of celebration and joy and authenticity, and it's met with too often violence of one form or another. Obviously, there's extreme forms of violence like gun violence, that's physical violence, where it's visible and you can see the pain and the horror and the tragedy. And there's other kinds of violence that are done to our community, the violence of telling someone that their identity is not valid, the violence of telling someone that they're not welcome in a particular space, the legislative attacks, all the things that our communities in the LGBTQ plus space are facing, but especially youth with the targeted attacks towards schools and things. I just want to say, one, your identity is valid and you are valid. And there are so many people who celebrate you. And there are so many people who love you. And there's so many people who resonate with your experience. And even in moments when you feel alone, I want you to know that there are people out there who are cheering for you. And so I find hope in the beautiful communities that we have within our community. I've started using the plural because we're definitely not a monolith. Various intersections of identity yield different chosen family groups and that kind of thing. But whatever your intersections are, there are people who understand, and there are people who love you, and there are people who are fighting like hell for you.
It's so powerful. And that's exactly where scary statistics need to land, is in a powerful place that we can see this, and that's actually an opportunity. So for someone feeling this pain or in this journey, I don't want these statistics to make you think that it's more likely that your life is lost or you're any further from access to care, but that you're literally not alone. That
Mm.
in a box of 100, there are so many more of you than you think, in that feeling of space where we're small and disconnected. So I love, Josh, your encouragement to access the communities out there, and part of that plural communities gives me the idea of even more hope, that I don't have to find one that fits me. I might find many that fit me partially, or as I evolve and grow, because As part of the Mental Health Association's mission, we're focusing on wellness as part of your journey and getting to know yourself so you can identify your needs and voice what works best for you. And that parallels so much with this identification process that an individual might be considering as they're balancing pride and either sharing their coming out stories to others who need to know that it's possible and that there are bumps that we can survive, um, or planning ahead for them, because there are statistics to support increased rates of suicide attempts and success in people of color. And that overlaps as well with the LGBTQ plus identity and experience. And so with those intersectionalities, we want someone not to feel more separate, but to identify that they're even more connected. There are even more pathways. You touched on some scary legislation, which was in my line of questioning coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say gay, the HB 1557 that was signed into law. I know we're only starting to see the impacts of that rise. Is there any one thing you see coming down the road that maybe concerns you most, or would you like to chat about?
Yeah, the don't say gay or trans law um, is something that should not be on our books. It should never have been signed into law. It's political posturing and targeting of our LGBTQ plus communities. Like several other examples, it's all about scoring political points. And it's having a real effect on conversations around LGBTQ identity. And there are already school boards that are saying, oh, can we make that proclamation about Pride Month? I don't know. So it's already happening, kind of chilling the speech around LGBTQ plus identity. And so, one, I would say that we don't know how this law will shake out once someone quote unquote breaks it and it goes to court. That's still yet to be determined. So we don't know what the precedents are around where the lines are. But what we do know is that you still get to be you, right? And you still get to show up as your full self. And although teachers and staff and employees have to walk certain lines, and we're figuring out where those lines are, and we're going to go right up to them. And I also believe we are in a space of civil disobedience where we're probably going to have to break some unjust laws. But obviously, we do that very carefully and advisedly. But you still get to be you. No one gets to say that you can't be. And you get to show up as yourself in whatever ways you feel safe doing so. And that is, it doesn't matter what laws are on the books, your identity is still your identity. And we are going to work to change the laws to be accepting and welcoming and supportive rather than punitive and prohibitive.
You are so well spoken on this. Thank goodness you are in the position you are in, Josh, because that kind of information needs to be translated like that. And you talk very clearly about these parallel experiences, an individual on their journey and society on our journey. That we're working, this individual deserves pride, freedom from shame, an authentic experience, and connections to support and their community and communities, and a feeling of freedom, whatever the educational or legal space is. But also that Pride Month is honoring this ongoing fight, this ongoing diligence of a population to demand the right to be and to thrive and to better society with us and around us. How brilliant our mass is and what we can all do together is so exciting. So if you're watching and you're concerned about suicide rates, we've got a youralifeguard.org website with great information. And as Josh said, connecting to the Mental Health Association. But also if you're lit up about society and what's going on and how you can become one of these advocates in Pride, please follow the One Orlando Alliance on Facebook, on social media. We've got great connections on their website. We're one of the member organizations that loves to share these messages. We are all working towards very similar goals, and we have a lot of good energy to put in the same directions. And we can be part of each other's chosen families. And there is a safety and a hope in what's ahead of us. So thank you for letting me merge mental health and pride together, because we really just have so much that we can do together. And I personally feel after this conversation, I have a lot to be proud of just in these connections.
Me too, Charlotte, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk today, and happy Pride, everybody.
Find your joy, tell your story, and maybe uplift someone else's. So thank you guys all for tuning in today, for coping together. We look forward to next time.